Well, since you've been good enough to spend your time with us today, I think you deserve to know who it is you're actually listening to tonight. On this webinar tonight, we are going to look at why your tap water must be filtered. It must be filtered. The toxins and drugs that you're taking in every day without even knowing it, why only you can solve this water problem. And we're going to look at the next generation of water for health, because things are moving very, very quickly as far as filtration and hydrogenation, UV light and so on. And we're going to look at all those. Here's my journey in a nutshell. I have been pursuing health, as I said, seriously since about 2015. I really decided, right, I got to do something about these things. I got to make some changes. And what I didn't do was prioritize certain things. You can't prioritize everything. And I didn't pay any attention, really. One of the things I got wrong was not considering the quality of my water. I didn't really think about it. But since I started to look into this, I've now spent hundreds of hours looking at it. And in many ways, you get to cheat and go the easy way. So that's where we're going with this journey tonight. But I would say to you at the start, you must take action, folks, to change things. No one else, if you don't look around the world now and see the craziness that there is and realize, if I don't take action on this, if I don't take action for my own health, no one else cares. If you don't see that, you're crazy right now. You have to be the one to protect your own health and the health of your family. No one else is going to do it for you. So let me share that long water journey in a very brief way. This will be very, very quick, I promise you. First of all, you must realize, for starters, that tap water is bad. It's actually worse than bad. The stuff in your tap water is pretty frightening. Now, I could explain to you what's in it and so on and so on, but a much easier way for me is to play a little clip for you. And this is a lady called Cheryl Atkinson. Now, Cheryl used to work for CBS, and she resigned her position at CBS because she said that corporate interests would keep caving in and letting other people control what she was allowed to report on. So she wasn't allowed to report on water. She wasn't allowed to report on EMFs. Certainly wasn't allowed to report on big pharma drugs. So CBS were really keeping her down. So she resigned and left, started her own production company, and now makes programs about the things she wants to make programs about. And this is a little clip from one she made called Troubled Water. And this will explain to you what is actually in your tap water and what the problem is. So let me click a couple of buttons here, get myself off screen, and run this for you right now.
Scientists have discovered a hard reality when it comes to our everyday drinking water. It's now loaded with a frightening array of contaminants, from pesticides to prescription medicine, that are not filtered out and can pose all kinds of health risks. We spoke to Seth Siegel, author of Troubled Water, about how this could have happened and the dangers it poses. When we're talking about what's in the water, what are some of the things that's in our water that might surprise people?
Well, we know for sure and widely there are chemicals like PFOA, the active ingredient in Teflon. We know for sure there's something called PFOS, which is an active ingredient in the Scotch Guard that you spray on your textiles.
Cancer-causing chemicals?
Yes, definitely cancer-causing and endocrine disrupting, which means the fancy term for the fact that it affects your hormonal system. So pesticides and herbicides, they're created to interfere with the reproductive life of a weed or of an insect. Well, that then gets washed into the water supply. We humans start to drink it, and even though it's very small doses of it, it's affecting us as well.
What are some of the pharmaceuticals, the medication that we find in our water, and isn't that cleaned out when there's normal purification process that goes on in municipalities?
You would hope so. You would think so. I assumed so when I started doing the research for my book. We have examples of where, mostly through fish research, we discover that products that we humans use on a daily basis are now in the fish. 50% of the fish they studied in the Great Lakes had psychiatric drugs in their brains and in their organs. So Prozac, Alexa, and drugs like that, and generics. The only way it comes into the water supply is humans take those pills, they pee it out after they've taken it a few hours later. It gets flushed through the wastewater treatment system into a waterway, all perfectly legal, exactly compliant with the law, and then it gets uptaken in fish, it gets uptaken in our drinking water, it gets uptaken in the water we use for our irrigation.
Was there a study that showed that hormones in the water is leading to what we would call transgender fish?
Well, I don't want to call it transgender fish, but I will call it intersexual fish. One recent study had studied 19 rivers, and they found that there was a very high level of male fish that were now growing eggs from the estrogen. The only reason for that would be from the estrogen that is getting into the water. Now, some of that comes from birth control pills, some of that comes from animal feed, some of that comes from other natural sources. Now, whether it has an effect on human gender selection, that's a bridge too far. But there are people, not me, but there are people who have a suspicion that that may be the cause.
We have federal agencies that we have paid billions of dollars to for this very purpose. I mean, there are a few things more important probably than protecting the safety of our water supply. So how has this been allowed to happen?
Frankly, Cheryl, this is precisely why I wrote this book. It is not to write a book. It is to hopefully to launch a movement where people will say, I demand better oversight and I demand better drinking water for myself and for my children.
Siegel says there is something the federal EPA should be doing, mandating use of technology to filter out these contaminants. He says it exists and isn't terribly expensive. It's just that hardly anyone is using it. One place that is, Orange County, California.
So you can see from that, our tap water is really bad news. Really bad news. The amount of stuff in there is pretty frightening. The one that frightens me the most is that your neighbor's pharmaceuticals are in there because, you know, the people around you are peeing out their pharmaceuticals that aren't absorbed and they're in your tap water and the filtration just simply isn't there to get those out again. Pretty scary thought. And you might wonder where all the dirt comes from. Well, some of it comes from your pipes. These are you know, the city pipes in your water system are how old? Like decades old, corroded, all the stuff that's in there. So these are just some of the things, the radionuclides, the disinfectants, the microbes, the arsenic, and as I say, all those pharmaceuticals from other people, all in your water. So I think you get the idea that your tap water needs changing. Now, the first thing I did, and this was way before I even started researching this, I sort of intuitively knew the taste of water wasn't good. And I started with a cheap filter pitcher. You get these in Target or Walmart in the US or here in the UK in Tesco's or wherever. They're maybe $25, $30, something like that. And they're mainly carbon or activated carbon. And they do improve the taste and the odor of the water for sure. But they're not effective with all the really bad stuff we've talked about, the inorganic pollutants like the arsenic and the fluoride and the chromium and the nitrates. They don't really deal with that stuff. But hey, if that's all you can afford, it's much better than nothing. So go for a cheap filter pitcher if that's, you know, all you can afford to invest in this right now. It's better than not doing anything. The next thing I did was I started drinking out of plastic bottles. Now, again, shows you how naive I was because the plastics are known for hormone disruption and infertility and all that sort of thing. And the toxicity burden that it puts on your system when you're drinking water that's been in plastic bottles is crazy. If you think about it, the plastic bottles you're buying could have sat in Dollar Tree's window with the sun belting down on it for like 6 months for all as you know. And that is just continually leaching the stuff out of the plastic into your water, which you're then drinking. So plastic bottles, you don't want to touch. Glass bottles are a really good solution. But hey, have you ever tried buying enough water in glass bottles to do your family? I did for a little while. Nightmare. Just the sheer weight of trying to get that stuff home is ridiculous. Now, if you're out in a restaurant and the restaurant serves water in glass bottles, that is by far your best option for something to drink in a restaurant, apart from the heavier stuff we all know about. But if you want to drink water, get it in the glass bottle. Great for a restaurant, not great for home at all. Our next film was called Faith, Hope, and Cancer. And for this film, we traveled to Tijuana, above other places. And Tijuana, because there was a cancer clinic down there that was dealing with cancer from a holistic point of view and dealing with end-of-life people. And we found these water machines all over the place in this clinic. You actually had to drink a certain amount of this water per day to stay on the cancer protocol. And as we were doing that series, we found out all this. Then we moved to our next series, and the water thing was logged in the back of my head, but I hadn't thought about it very much. As we were doing the Live Longer series, we traveled across the globe to interview person after person, expert after expert, doctor after doctor. And we found with all these experts, suddenly there was a light bulb went on for us as we were doing interview after interview, because we'd interviewed hundreds of these people, and so many of them were mentioning that they themselves were taking something called hydrogen water. They were drinking this themselves. It was almost like some kind of secret insiders club because they weren't talking about them particularly on camera. Some of them were, but mostly they were talking about behind the scenes, how much this stuff was helping them. And you're talking about people like Dr. David Jonkers, Dr. Josh Axe. Josh had a machine not only in his home, but also in his office for his staff. Dr. Tony Jimenez. Tony is the guy behind the cancer clinics down in Mexico that we visited, and he was recommending that everyone in his clinic should be drinking hydrogen water. Dr. Rashid Bittar, same thing. Ryan and Teddy Sternagel from the Stern Method again, same thing, machine in their home. Dr. Veronique de Saulnier, cancer conqueror. Liana Werner Gray, of the Earth Dance, author of the Earth Dance, same thing with her. Ern Elizabeth, same thing. Dr. Darrell Joffrey, who was my own doctor for a while in New York. And when I was with Darrell in New York, machines was in his office. Jeffrey Smith, GMO, anti-GMO advocate. And Robert Scott Bell, who is a DJ, a radio presenter of health programs. Now, Robert was the first one we actually saw on camera talking about hydrogen water. And it was in the series Live Longer, Feel Better. So let me play this for you. It's only 3 or 4 minutes long. This is Robert Scott Bell, Hydrogen Water, from the Live Longer, Feel Better series.
Hydrogen is the first element on the periodic table of elements. It's the lightest, smallest, and it can go everywhere and anywhere. But what is it functionally in the body? Of course, H2O, 2 hydrogen and oxygen make up the water. Through an electrolytic process, you can actually reduce the water and reveal the hydrogen to the body in a bioavailable, if you will, form. And what it does is quite fantastic, because it is considered the ultimate antioxidant in that it can take apart, if you will, or let's say put back together that which is very damaging to the cell, these things known as hydroxyl radicals, the OH. And by having the hydrogen available to that in the cell, they can combine and convert from a dangerous substance to a harmless water that is floated out of the body. So it's a beautiful starting point to engage what we know of normal metabolic processes of excretion, of dealing with metabolic waste, things that would be inflammatory if left in the cells unchecked. And hydrogen via water can be released and made accessible to the cells deep in the body, anywhere in the body, and in that way reduce a lot of the oxidative stress or damage or inflammatory cascades that many people are stuck in. So hydration is critical for all of us, yet we don't realize how much we rely upon hydrogen as an element, because most people are not on a clean, organic, raw food type diet. Very little bit of their diet is made up of that. The fiber that is found in raw vegetation, for instance, in a healthy gut microbiome would feed the bacteria in such a way that that bacteria interacting with that whole unprocessed raw organic food would produce copious amounts of hydrogen made available to the rest of the body and cells. So we have to heal the body and get people back to a state where they can actually do that from their food. We can't wait for that. We all need to drink water. So if we can release the hydrogen from the water, we can facilitate powerful, optimal metabolic function restoration, and then continue to work to heal the gut so that it can do what it's designed to do in interacting with real food. But the water is a key way to get there right away, immediately. The technology to produce hydrogen water has been around for many decades. In Asia, they have these machines that are utilized, and they're considered medicinal, if you will. The machines are medical devices. But much of the hype surrounding this type of water has been focused on alkalinity, the ability to change the pH, to split the stream so you have an alkaline stream and an acid stream. But the reality is the benefit was not due to its pH, but due to the hydrogen that would be released in typically the alkaline stream. Now we can produce that water in a pH neutral form, so we don't have to split and waste the water that you can't use. So in this way, the hydrogen has been known, and there are hundreds of scientific articles, peer-reviewed articles on animal and human models in terms of disease processes in the body that can be corrected via introduction of hydrogen in a bioavailable form.
So that was Robert Scott Bell, the interview, as I said, from the Live Longer series that really, first of all, on camera, the first time on camera we'd heard about hydrogen water being talked about. Now, he mentioned free radicals there. So let's look at the causes of free radicals that we looked at earlier. The things like EMFs in our atmosphere, radiation, household cleaners, industrial chemicals, GMO food, all these things are bringing stuff into our lives that wasn't here 20 years ago, that we wish wasn't here right now. What is a free radical? Well, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see a stable molecule, which everywhere there, the electrons are paired. But if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see an unpaired electron. And basically, that is what a free radical is. It is a molecule that has an unpaired electron in there, also called oxidants, which is why we need to talk about antioxidants. But a free radical has an unpaired electron, and this is causing all sorts of damage because it's searching around to try to find another molecule that has an unpaired electron. And this is what causes oxidative stress. Now, oxidation is an inescapable part of life. It's a normal part of life. If you look at the apple there, well, an apple is going to oxidize. That's just how it is. But it doesn't need to oxidize at a really fast pace. And that's what free radicals cause our bodies to do. They cause us to age faster. The oxidation is not a good thing. And it's caused to happen so much faster by these free radicals. Now, it's really crucial that you realize that this leads to chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation in turn leads to all the different major diseases that we're seeing around us. And if you ever wonder why the big diseases are spiking right now, well, this is one of the main reasons, because there's so much oxidation and there's so much inflammation in our bodies that disease is just becoming more and more rampant, basically. Like diabetes is up 700% since 1958. I saw yesterday that obesity in the US has gone from being the major problem in something like 13 states to now 41 states. Mind-blowing how much this is a problem. But diabetes, huge. 75% of Americans are now overweight. Now, this was before 2020, so I would say now it's probably worse than that. Arthritis to rise 49% in the next 20 years. That's what the government are saying. Dementia deaths up 123%. And listen, again, I mentioned dementia earlier, but we all know it's rampant now. It's absolutely rampant everywhere. Cancer up another 57% in less than 2 decades. It's going to be 1 in 2 is the stat. 1 in 2 of us are going to have cancer in the next 10 years. Heart failure up 14%. Again, numbers are staggering. Depression up 11% since 2005. And again, these figures were pre-COVID. So that's going to be way worse than it was as well. Major diseases are rampant right now. But why? Well, we've sort of touched on it, as we said. It's worse because all these things have exploded. EMFs have exploded. Household cleaners, alcohol, GMO foods, all exploding in our world right now. So I'm going to refer to it as Syndrome X. I'm just going to, and X because X standing for oxidation. Now, if you're noticing that people's minds are starting to fade before their time, as we are, if you're piling on the pounds and racing towards diabetes, people's hearts giving up in their 50s and 60s, it's all to do with Syndrome X. It's all to do with all these things that we're talking about that are affecting us. And hydrogen can wind back that inflammation big style and prevent this. X for oxidation. What fights it? As we've said, antioxidants. And that is simply, an antioxidant is something that comes alongside the free radical and donates an electron. Now, you've heard of CoQ10 as an antioxidant, I'm sure, and eating blueberries and taking your vitamin C. Well, Dr. Mercola, who I go back to quite often, he said, I believe hydrogen is the most exciting and profoundly effective antioxidant that there is. Let me play this little clip for you. It's only 3 minutes long, and this is what Dr. Mercola explains about hydrogen as an antioxidant.
Hi, this is Dr. Mercola, and today I want to share some really exciting information about one of the best ways to reduce excessive oxidative stress in your body. Why is that important? Because excessive oxidative stress is going to produce too many free radicals, which can be vitally important signaling molecules like nitric oxide. But when you get too many of them from eating a poor diet or being exposed to toxins, they're going to cause some harm. You see, these excess free radicals can damage your precious stem cells, your mitochondria, your cell membranes, proteins, and DNA, and all this can lead to disease and premature death. Now, the Japanese have discovered a novel approach to address this with the most common molecule in the universe, molecular hydrogen gas. Now, they've done most of the research and in 2007 published a landmark study in the most prestigious journal, Nature Medicine, that catalyzed a mountain of science on the clinical use of molecular hydrogen gas to reduce excessive oxidative stress. Now, because molecular hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe, It can easily penetrate every tissue in your body, including your brain and important cellular parts like your mitochondria and your nucleus, where it can reduce excessive oxidative stress. Now, although the precise way in which molecular hydrogen does its metabolic magic has yet to be conclusively proven, we believe that one of the ways is that it activates the important NRF2 pathway that signals your body and your DNA specifically to create additional important antioxidants. This, we believe, is really the ultimate way to create antioxidants, producing them only when you need it, as molecular hydrogen only tells your body to make these additional antioxidants when there's excessive oxidative stress. This way, your body doesn't create these powerful antioxidant molecules when they aren't needed, which can cause complications by suppressing these beneficial, biologically important free radicals, which are signaling molecules.
So that's Dr. Mercola's take on antioxidants and hydrogen as being the ultimate antioxidant. In short, many things in life cause an accumulation of damaged cells in your body if the free radicals created are not neutralized. That's what antioxidants do. They neutralize these free radicals. But if you do deal with syndrome X, if you do deal with all this stuff, your blood sugar gets healthier, your brain fog disappears, your joints stop creaking, and you stop shouting at your partner, believe it or not, because you're not always so grouchy. It's got to be a good thing. Syndrome X is purely a result of our own modern environment, the internal and the external, and that is what's leading to all these major diseases. Hydrogen needs to be produced in our bodies. Our gut is meant to be healthy and meant to be producing 7 to 10 liters every day, but it's simply not happening. Now, the Japanese have been dealing with this for years upon years. In Japan, hydrogen machines are recognized as medical devices. They're actually subsidized as medical devices. So they've known about this for years. And we actually, we sent a team to film at the Molecular Hydrogen Conference in Europe last year. And I'll play some of those interviews for you at the very end tonight after everything. If you're really into this, you can stay on the very end and watch those couple of interviews. It's only like 6 or 7 minutes long, but really, really interesting what these people were saying about how hydrogen has had an effect on them. And I'll also play an interview I did with this friend of mine, Darryl Joffrey. That's him with Kelly Ripp and Ryan Seacrest from Morning with Kelly and Ryan. But Darryl did an interview with me because he is a major believer in hydrogen as a healer and explains how it helped his father as his father was passing on into the next world, but explained how this really helped his father in his last days. So I'll play that interview at the very end for you as well. Hydrogen is number 1 on the periodic table. It's the smallest, lightest element and can go anywhere in your body. H2, that is what it looks like, H2. Now, a water molecule looks like this, H2O. So hydrogen molecule like this, H2, water molecule like this, H2O. If you look at water in a glass, that is what it looks like. Water molecules is a representation of water. But this is a representation of water because people don't really understand, well, how do you add hydrogen and so on? Well, when hydrogen goes in there, the water is infused with hydrogen, okay? It doesn't bond. It's like putting salt in the water. The salt floats about there. And hydrogen molecules do the same. It's neutral, doesn't affect the pH, and it's colorless, it's tasteless, it's odorless, so you don't know it's in there. But it's not bonded. It is simply in the water. The water is a delivery device, if you like. So to be therapeutic, it must be dissolved in there. It's those little tiny nanobubbles, the invisible ones, that are actually important for getting the hydrogen into you. Now, it's measured in parts per million, as we're going to mention, however, parts per million. And the therapeutic level means it has to be above 0.5 parts per million. That's what needs to be in there for it to actually do you good. And as Mercola said, it can neutralize the damaging effects of processed foods, of sugar, of alcohol, of cigarette smoking, of air pollution, of EMFs, and so on. Now, I wanted to speak to someone who could really put this all in context. And this is the guy I went to, Tyler W. LeBaron. Tyler is the founder of the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. And no one in the English-speaking world that I'm aware of knows more about hydrogen than this guy. He's devoted the last 13 years of his life to hydrogen. So I got him on the phone, on a Zoom call, and I recorded it, and I'm going to play that for you now. Tyler W. LeBaron talking about hydrogen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I explained to you, I have the wonderful Tyler W. the Baron with me today. Tyler, it's great to see you.
Oh, thank you, Trevor. Yeah, my pleasure to be here.
It's good. It's good to talk to you. Tyler, you're executive director of the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. And this goes back with you way back to 2009, which amazed me as I was doing my research in this. And you read something in 2009 that really piqued your interest and has led to this amazing journey since. Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, I actually learned about alkaline ionized water back in 2009. And it was really fascinating because, first of all, there were so many testimonials about it. And of course, you can't put all your faith in testimonies, but sometimes when there are so many, it's like empirical. It's like, maybe there's really something to this. So I actually, bought a machine, started looking into it. And I didn't have my science and at the time, I just started my university, science degree. I majored in biochemistry. And I went and I talked to the different professors about this water, trying to understand negative ORP or alkaline or microclustering or different things, and all of them were like were telling me, well, that's not true, that's not true. Everything I brought up, they would tell me, well, that's not true, and not just tell me it's not true, but explain to me why it's not true.
Okay.
So I'm like, holy cow, like then how does this work? And I ended up doing a little study myself where an athletic study basically, and I was able to show that drinking lots of this water was able to improve exercise performance. And I presented this at this research conference. And anyway, during my reading and research of this process of electrolysis, I learned about hydrogen gas. And I just put a little snippet in there that, maybe hydrogen gas is responsible for the therapeutic effects,
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, later I talked to some of the biochemistry professors and others who I talked to earlier. And they looked at my report, and then I came back and met with them, one of the biochemistry professors, and he had printed off one of the articles I cited in my paper. It was an article published in 2007 in Nature Medicine that showed that hydrogen is able to reduce oxidative stress by acting as a selective antioxidant. And he gave me the article, and he says, Tyler, I really think there is something to this. And when he said that, like, I don't know, like something just like came over me that gave me this desire to like really understand and study this area. And so I went to the literature and I pulled all the research I could on molecular hydrogen, which there was only like 50 articles or so at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I read them all, and I was like, this is so fascinating. Started doing a little of my own research as I could. Later was able to go to Japan for a fulfillment for my internship to graduate in biochemistry in 2013. And was able to go there and research with these actual researchers and I was at the Department of Neurogenetics and molecular biology and things. And yeah, I was able to apply hydrogen gas to the cells and then see the biological changes, meet other researchers, and then I was like, man, like this is really causing an effect, and that really got me started on wanting to do more education and so on.
One thing I want to point out to people, Tyler, is I work with Andrew Saul, who's a vitamin expert, and he will not endorse any vitamin because he says as soon as he endorses a vitamin, it takes away his neutrality. You're the same with hydrogen machines, and I just want to point that out to people. You don't endorse any particular machine, and this is not something that you're making money from. I want to point that out to people. And that's what makes it an interesting interview for me, because what I get from you is complete neutrality. I just want to emphasize that to people. But that is the case, correct?
Yeah. So, and it's important because, yeah, I am focused on the research and the education. And so a lot of people, email me asking for, products, whatever. But in terms of like specifics, that's not what I'm about. I'm here for the education and the research. That's what excites me.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to point that out to people. Now, you mentioned the anti-inflammatory properties, and that is one of the big things here. Tell me why hydrogen is such a better anti-inflammatory than, say, eating your blueberries or taking your vitamin C. Why is hydrogen, and I know Dr. McCullough has said in his opinion, it's right up there. It's the best. Why do you reckon this is the best antioxidant out there?
Okay, so we have two things, the antioxidant and the anti-inflammatory. Which one should we talk about first?
We'll go with the oxidation.
Okay, so with the antioxidant, it depends on how we define the word best, because hydrogen is the best because it is the best and it is the worst. And let me explain this. If we say best is something that can just neutralize all the oxidants, get rid of all the free radicals. If it's oxidizing, then it's going to be neutralized. If that's the definition of best, then hydrogen is considered the worst antioxidant. And that's very important because we need oxidation. I mean, when we breathe oxygen because oxygen is an oxidizer, right? So we breathe oxygen so it can oxidize our foods, and it can and we can have metabolism. That's how metabolism works. And then during this process, we sometimes produce some free radicals, which is just a reactive oxygen molecule or something. But then these free radicals in small amounts at specific locations, they are able to activate in very important signaling. They're able to help us, like, for example, our immune system. Even have anti-inflammatory effects. So many neurological benefits. These free radicals are critical, and so, but only in a very small amount in specific locations and everything. So, if we could take something that would just neutralize all of that, oh, that'd be really bad. And in fact, there's research showing that high doses of synthetic antioxidants, where it's just going in there, and because there's just so many antioxidants, maybe it's just neutralizing all of these free radicals that we actually need. It ends up being very problematic, and this is shown in both animal and in human studies.
Okay.
So hydrogen, why then can we even consider it to be the best? Well, if we define best as a molecule or an antioxidant, right, that is able to, number one, get into the cells, and number two, is somehow selective or discriminant, that can only go after the bad free radicals and leave the good guys behind. If we define best that way, then by the very definition, then yes, hydrogen is the best antioxidant.
Right.
And so I talked about it's able to get into the cells. Well, first, that is like the most important thing. It doesn't matter how amazing something is, if you can't get into the cell, it's pointless, right? I mean, it is the smallest molecule in the universe, and it's able to penetrate the cell membranes and enter, say, the mitochondria via simple diffusion. I mean, it's no problem. It doesn't have to go through a transport or anything, so it's able to get there in the first place. So that's number one. And then number two, it is actually selective. It's discriminate in this case. It's able to only go after the bad guys and leave the good guys behind. And it kind of sounds magical. How does it do that? How does it know? Well, it's really quite simple. It's because the bad guys are just really, really powerful oxidizers. The bad guys, like hydroxyl radical, okay, or a peroxynitrite oxidant. And it is simply because they are so powerful that they can react with molecular hydrogen and get neutralized. And like with the hydrogen gas reacts with the hydroxyl radical, well, you form water, which is pretty good stuff, actually. We drink it.
So moving from oxidation or antioxidation to inflammation. Inflammation, obviously, we're all becoming more and more aware, is a root of so many diseases. But like oxidation is necessary in our bodies to some extent. So how does this work with hydrogen?
Yeah, it's perfect that you said that too, because yes, inflammation is problematic, but it's specifically it's low-grade chronic inflammation. That's what the issue is. Inflammation is neither good nor bad. It is what it is. I mean, we have to look at the specific scenario, right? I would say for most people, if they have inflammatory problems or whatever, and taking a hydrogen, they may not see as strong of effects as taking a prescription medication, for example, just because it's not like that. Now, there are people who seem to be extra sensitive to hydrogen, where they're like, no, like I can take this hydrogen and it is as effective. And maybe some of that is actually placebo and other things, which that's great. We just don't understand all the mechanisms of how this is working. But I'm just putting that out there. It's probably not going to be as strong, right, as conventional pharmaceuticals, because it's kind of regulating everything. And going back to this antioxidant effect, we know that increased free radicals also, oxidative stress, also promote inflammation. The oxidative stress activates NF-κB. It's a transcription factor that induces pro-inflammatory cytokines, and then pro-inflammatory cytokines then in turn activate more free radical production, and the cycle just gets bigger and bigger and out of whack. And because hydrogen has effects on both the anti-inflammatory aspect and the antioxidant aspect, it can help to regulate and attenuate both of those from going in hyper overdrive, where it's going to be very damaging to the cells.
Okay. You mentioned there, Tyler, that some people will have a more dramatic response to the hydrogen. So let's say, I have no idea what the percentage is, but let's say 10% of people see a dramatic response. Are the other 90% of people wasting their time taking hydrogen water, for example, or taking hydrogen tablets? Or is it still doing, a lot of good that you're just not seeing the things as dramatically?
Let's assume that hydrogen is as good as the evidence currently suggests, right? Then I would say if you don't feel it, then that doesn't mean it's not doing something for you. Because I'm one of those non-responders. Like, I talk to people and sometimes they'll just tell me all these things it did for them. You might not feel or notice any benefits, but there might be a lot of really good stuff that's going on. And going to the glucose levels, almost I don't know, but I was gonna say almost everybody who ends up, the doctor says, hey, you have diabetes. They're like, what are you talking about? I feel fine. High blood pressure. People have super high blood pressure.
Yeah.
I feel fine. What are you talking about? And so you can imagine the scenario. They're drinking hydrogen water, and this doesn't happen for everybody, but for some people, hydrogen water really can help lower glucose levels. And you can imagine they're sitting up super high. They drink hydrogen water for 8, 12 weeks. Now they're back to normal, and they're like, I don't feel any different. Didn't work for me. And I'm like, you totally missed out on these biomarkers. So, if we have the ability to really measure everything that's going on at the cellular level and the biomarkers and everything, then maybe we would actually see something.
Well, are there studies out there, Tyler? If we take things that are really major in the world right now, like dementia, like stroke, for example, are there studies, human studies, with hydrogen and this type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that is one of the major areas of medical research in hydrogen right now, is something like a stroke model, for example. And in fact, they did one study. It was a small study, but 50 people, so 25 in each group. But they compared post-stroke to the inhalation of hydrogen gas, in this case, to an approved medical drug, edaravone. And they found that the inhalation of hydrogen gas was actually more effective than the drug in pretty much all the cases. Wow. So, it does appears to really have some important medical applications. And again, some people are going to maybe respond better to this than other people, but absolutely, with some of these chronic and acute major conditions like this, there's a lot of medical research in this area.
Well, Tyler, considering all this, and this has been used in Japan for so long now, why are we really only hearing about this? Why is it not all over the news? Why is it not much more mainstream than it is at the moment?
I think it just takes time, in order to accumulate enough evidence and everything as well. I mean, it is, Japan is a very population dense area. Like, in Tokyo, for example, there was a survey that over 50% of the population, have or do use hydrogen in some form or the other. So
what percent did you say?
50%.
Really?
Yeah. So it's very, very high, but the word spread so quickly. It did start there back in 2007. Even before that, there was stuff going on, and it didn't really hit the market here until 2017 in a lot of ways, kind of a 10-year gap type thing. And so there is that time. And then the other thing is in Japan, you have some of the most prestigious medical universities in Japan researching this. Well, in Japan, the people in Japan, they know, Nagoya Daigaku, hontou desu ka? That's like, wow, like that's like serious. Like, this is a really good university or Nippon Medical School, You hear that here and it's like, and okay, but imagine if we had the same research going on at Harvard and Stanford, all this Ivy League stuff, and there actually is some research going on at Harvard and some other places too on hydrogen gas, but it's going to take some time, right? And so there's that aspect also. And then again, we are the Western medicine. We do have a level of skepticism that. We're not going to immediately start practicing and trying something until it reaches a certain tier of evidence per se. Yeah. And then you can go into maybe, larger pharmaceutical companies trying to prevent something, from getting into it. But I'm just saying, but I think it'll get there because it's so easy to use. It's so easy to to get, and it's safe. And I think eventually, it's going to be just as popular as it is everywhere.
Yeah, a really interesting thing happened a couple of months ago, Tyler, and this comes full circle to that first machine you had, because you were saying about, is it alkalinity, is it ORP, what is doing this? And you had a study come out a couple of months ago, which I know blew a lot of people away and has caused some controversy simply because it ruffled some fellas in the alkalinity community. But tell us what that study really brought forth.
Yeah, so this study is it's electrolyzed reduced water, and there's 2 reviews that I wrote. One is that showing that the mechanism, the benefits, is exclusively due to hydrogen gas, and the other is some certain safety concerns about drinking this type of water. And this first review, I looked at all the literature. I've been working on this since 2013, actually. So like 10 years, and just was able to finally compile everything together. Went through all the data, all the publications, all these publications people are talking about. Look, see, ionized water, alkaline works. Here it is, here it is. And I went through all of those and was able to conclusively demonstrate that all of these studies clearly show that when you remove the hydrogen gas from the water, the benefits are eliminated. And that's regardless of the pH, that's regardless of all the other claimed properties. It was just the hydrogen gas that mattered. And in fact, having a super high pH could be problematic. Number one, because maybe the pH is just too high. Number two, maybe because of electrodegradation or something going on, within the machine itself, and a number of other things that I discussed in the publication. There are some actually concerns about this, but in the end, it all comes down to, hey, what is the concentration of hydrogen? And that's all that matters. All the benefits are simply due to, molecular hydrogen.
So everything to do with alkaline water, hydrogen water, comes down to hydrogen, 100%.
In terms of the therapeutic effects, yes. I mean, drinking water is actually good for you. And just to clarify too, drinking alkaline water that's natural from the ground, for example, that can be good for you, not because of the pH, but because it contains a lot of minerals like magnesium and calcium, a whole bunch of other trace minerals and things. And because it has those, it ends up sometimes being slightly alkaline, but it's not the pH. And so very different when you're talking about, alkaline water from machine.
Sure. Fantastic. Tyler, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you've done. And I think these 13 years will go down as being very well invested indeed.
Oh, thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you. Good to see you. Now, as Tyler explained there, hydrogen is the ultimate antioxidant. Well over 1,000 peer-reviewed studies by this stage, showing benefits in over 170 disease models. You'll hear those figures a few times tonight. What about studies? What about these studies that we're talking about? Well, I'll give you an amazing link at the end where you can spend hours yourself looking into this. You simply type in the disease. It tells you the studies that have been done with hydrogen regarding that. So I'll give you that link at the end tonight. But let's look at the top 7. Let's look at the ones that affect most people, okay? Let's start with diabetes. Hydrogen-rich water improves fat and glucose metabolism, even in people who have type 2 diabetes and impaired glucose intolerance. That's what the studies are showing. Number 2, arthritis sufferers. Now, I myself, sadly, have both my hips replaced. Going back way, I'm 59 now. Nearly took a year off there. I'm 59 now. And if I go back, my hips were replaced about 20 years ago, mainly through football, playing a lot of soccer. But if I'd known about this then, could this have helped? I don't know. But it has certainly been shown to slow the progression of rheumatoid arthritis and relieve some of its symptoms, because rheumatoid arthritis at its core is a condition that causes inflammation in your joints. Again, too much inflammation, as discussed in the video. Heart attack victims, number 3. Many animal studies have proven that hydrogen-rich substances greatly improve the prospects of people suffering heart failure and heart attacks. Number 4, fighting cancer. And again, a lot of studies on this right now. After applying hydrogen-rich solutions to cancer cells in the lab, scientists concluded that they could shrink and suppress the growth of such cells. So again, I will never make a promise to you. I'm not going to say, hey, get hydrogen water, you're never going to have cancer. I've seen ads that say that, and it's scandalous that they're allowed to say that. We don't know if it's going to do that for you, but it can do it. That's what the studies are showing. It can do it. Number 5, brain function. Brain function's at the top of everyone's list right now with dementia and so on. I have lost at least 2 members of family in the last 5 years with major dementia issues. And it's a really sad situation. I'm sure most of you have been touched by it too. But drinking hydrogen-rich water can protect against the neurological damage of brain injury, both the type that occurs during surgery and stroke. And really interestingly, also that which occurs over time due to oxidative stress. So not only does it help if you get your brain actually injured or you have a stroke, but the slow oxidative stress of your brain can be slowed way down by hydrogen water. Really amazing finding. Strong bones in old age. Hydrogen supports this. That's one of the most frequently investigated benefits actually of molecular hydrogen, showing that your bones have a longer and stronger lifespan if you take an H2. And number 7 of the top 7, autoimmune function. Because of its ability to decrease excessive free radicals, again, as we've talked about, H2 can help battle things like lupus, Hashimoto's, Graves, and many other autoimmune diseases. So the studies are there. There's no doubt about that. Over 1,000 of them. And I will give you a link at the end, and we'll email that link to you as well, as we have said. Some people who were at this conference, the hydrogen conference in Europe, in the Slovak Republic, that we sent a reporting team to. So let me click a couple of buttons and I'll run these for you. In the meantime, if you do have questions, please, by all means, click through there and chat with the guys, because they will do their very best to get it sorted out for you. And that's what we're here for. So let me click a couple of buttons and run this for you, and I'll get myself off the screen. Darrell, wonderful to see you.
Trevor, always a pleasure to see you and to speak with you. Thanks so much.
Really good to see you. What's your experience of this, Darrell? That's really what I want to get to the nub of. What's your experience of hydrogen water and why you believe it's so useful to people?
Look, Trevor, inflammation is the root of all evil. I mean, everyone knows, we hear that buzzword inflammation, but like, what is inflammation? Inflammation in the short run heals our body. You know, if I cut my skin, it's inflammation that heals that cut. It's the chronic inflammation that develops over time from a toxic lifestyle, from an acidic lifestyle, from the things that we eat, the things that we're drinking, right? I mean, it's crazy what's in our tap water. You know, they tout New York City as the best tap water, or the best water, I should say, in the world, but I would say that's amongst tap waters. But there's studies showing there's 316 different contaminants in our water, including Prozac, which is crazy. Where did that come from? The urinary discharge that people were kind of secreting this and ended up in our water supply. So the reality is that inflammation is the root of all evil, and the things that we put into our body to decrease inflammation is giving us our best shot. And one of the most powerful tools I've ever found, I'm still using this at home, I'm using this in my wellness center, is the hydrogen water, molecular hydrogen, because its ability to down-regulate the inflammation in the body. It's literally one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories. It improves gut function. It gets to the brain within 30 minutes, so it's absolutely improving your cognitive function. And its ability as the most powerful antioxidant in the body, I mean, I call it the master antioxidant because it's a selective antioxidant, which means it goes after the bad free radicals. We have to understand that not all free radicals are bad. There are some good ones. But the bad one, the one that's damaging, the one that breaks down our cells, the one that makes us more vulnerable to things like the coronavirus or even cancer, is that hydroxyl free radical. And it's the molecular hydrogen, the hydrogen water, is what we call a selective antioxidant, which means it goes after the bad ones.
Why do we need it, Darrell, as a supplement? Why is our body, because I actually quote you, and every time I do this webinar, I quote you about the fact that our guts are not up to producing this. So can you explain that a little for people?
Yeah, I mean, everything is in the gut. Gut function is where it's at. 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. 80% of your nervous system lives in the gut. You know, even Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said, look to the gut. It's the cause of all dis-ease. And I emphasize dis-ease with a hyphen because it's a lack of balance, lack of harmony in our gut. So we have to take care of our gut. It's really one of the most important things, obviously, next to our brains, because that's really where all the inflammation gets into the body. That's where we have a whole microsystem of bacteria. I mean, we talk about what's going on out there. We've been kind of cultured to be afraid of bugs, but we have to understand, Trevor, that our body is made of bugs. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you eat or drink, you're not drinking for one, you're drinking for 100 trillion. There's 10 times more bacteria in your gut than you have healthy cells, and there's 100 times more viruses. But here's the thing, they need to be commensal. They need to be living in harmony. And the problem, because of overuse of antibiotics, I mean, Trevor, if we use antibiotics just once, it wipes out your gut microbiome for 2 years. Literally, it's an open door policy. So now all these things that shouldn't get into the blood get into the blood, like undigested proteins and yeast and fungus and molds, inflammation, and this begins to build and eventually goes to our brains. It goes to our cardiovascular system. It goes to our kidneys. So my point is that the gut is where this happens. And over the years, from sugar and grains and processed foods and stress, I mean, stress will affect your gut function more than any other food or drink you can put into the body. Yeah. And what happens is you start to get an overgrowth of these bad bacteria, even parasites. And when that happens, our body stops producing one of the most important elements in the body, which is hydrogen. You see, the body should create 10 liters of hydrogen every single day. And if that was the case, we'd be fine. We wouldn't need to supplement. But no one does that, not even me, and I'm pretty healthy, right? So over time, because of this inflammation in our gut, we produce less and less of this hydrogen. Again, we should be producing 10 liters. Now we're not getting even close to that. And that has a huge downward and upward effect inside our body, on our health, on our cells, on inflammation, on how we feel, our energy. So this is why we have to supplement with hydrogen. And thankfully, from the things that we're talking about, there's actually easy ways to do that now to really get the amount that you need so it could facilitate these things in the body.
And what about its effect on our brain, Darren? Because, you know, everyone is worried about Alzheimer's, and rightly so, because it's exploding across the planet right now. How does this assist there? Is it simply the fact that it fights the inflammation in your brain, or is there more to it than that?
Well, it's more to that. And yes, I mean, I agree. Alzheimer's is a huge issue. It's now, I believe, a recent study I saw is the 4th leading cause of death in our country, which is crazy. I mean, growing up, we didn't even hear about this. And sadly, I lost my godmother to this just a few years ago. It's something that we are all going to be kind of in touch with and facing in one way or another, just like heart disease and just like cancer is such an epidemic. Alzheimer's is becoming that as well. But if you look at what the real cause of Alzheimer's is, and again, this is what the research shows, Alzheimer's parallels inflammation of the brain. It's so important. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. This could be depression. This could be Alzheimer's. This could be dementia. This could be something like brain fog and memory loss. There's inflammatory pathway. And the beautiful thing about molecular hydrogen is that when you drink this, when it's dissolved in water, it literally gets to the brain within 30 minutes. It's such a small molecule, hydrogen, right? It's the number one element on the periodic table, going back to like chemistry in 2nd grade, which I never was very good at. But again, the fact that it's such a small molecule means it can get to anywhere in the body fast, and it can cross that critical blood-brain barrier to enter into the brain and have that effect to reduce the inflammatory pathways. And it does this by, again, stimulating that gastric ghrelin in the gut and even leptin. So when you stimulate these different types of hormones, they in turn can actually affect areas of the brain like the hippocampus, the brainstem, the hypothalamus, and it's incredible. I mean, there's studies on Parkinson's, and there's over 700 studies, which was why I love hydrogen so much. But there's actually studies on Parkinson's patients when they drink the hydrogen water, literally within minutes, their tremors and their shaking stops. I mean, it's that powerful. But it's something like anything else. There needs to be consistency. If you do this over time, you'll notice the huge benefits. And it's not just how we feel, but it's also what we're preventing in the body. Sometimes we don't know where the inflammation is landing in the body. So we have to anticipate, we have to assume, and this is why it's so critical that we supplement with things like this.
I think you make a very good point there, Darren, because I was talking to someone about this yesterday, that very often we're all guilty of the silver bullet syndrome. So buying the machine, we think we've got to drink the water. We've got to do this on a daily basis, on a continual basis, to see it actually helping us, right?
100%. There's this quote I love. It says, knowledge is not power, it's potential power. Action is power. It's just like exercise. We all get exercise. If I go to the trainer, you know, it's like when we get something new, whether that's a new gym membership or a new machine or whatever that might be, a lot of people will use it for the first 2 weeks. And then after the honeymoon phase is over, they stop. It's like a juicer. People always ask me, what's the best juicer I should get? And my answer is the one that you're going to use. It doesn't need to be like a $300 juicer. It needs to be one that you're going to use every single day or with some repetition. Hydrogen is no different. When you drink hydrogen water, you got to drink it every day. I mean, Trevor, this is why I have one at home. I have one in my wellness center. I want to know everywhere that I'm at, I have access to this water. We give it to our dog, Sprout. I mean, it's something that I believe so much, and I make sure every one of my family members have it. And again, going back to when my father was diagnosed with his esophageal cancer, I became a massive investigator, and I discovered the powerful healing benefits of hydrogen, not just on inflammation, not just on inflammation of the gut and colon health, but its ability to inhibit cancer, colorectal cancer. I mean, there was a study in 2015 from Peter J showing the powerful effect of apoptosis. So the effects of what this water does into the body are just huge. But to your point, we got to be consistent, do it every single day to really experience the massive health benefits you're going to get from it.
Yeah. Darryl, listen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule. I know you're traveling at the moment and you're all over the place. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you do in this space.
It's a pleasure, Trevor. Thank you so much for what you do. And it's always great to see you.
All right, buddy. Take care.
You too.
A little lakeside resort in the sleepy Slovakian countryside is definitely not the first place you'd think of in relation to cutting-edge medical advances. But experts from Japan, from Russia, and from across Europe have gathered here to discuss the latest developments in molecular hydrogen therapy. For an average member of the audience, what are the key things you would want any member of the public to know about molecular hydrogen?
That it will be the compound of this century, the top, because it not only in medicine, it goes in fuels. They do tests now for cars. They do it in agriculture now. I was on the University Life Science in Prague, in Sugdol, and brought it on there. They do tests now for agriculture. It's the formula for the future.
I didn't realize until I heard this morning that the Japanese government has approved hydrogen therapy in hospitals, and that there are patients being treated in hospitals with hydrogen therapy. So they obviously put faith in the research, which shows in animal studies and human comparisons that this stuff is hugely beneficial.
Yeah, well, I mean, the hydrogen is one of the therapeutical gases. You also have ozone. When you hear about oxygen, oxygen helps people as well. You have oxygen therapy as well. But there are studies being undertaken on plants as well. For example, in China, because hydrogen helps plants to grow better and faster, and also on animals. Not only as like testing the product on animals, but I mean really testing whether the animals get better when they have a health issue. So that's really quite interesting. So we can actually use hydrogen anywhere, really.
It does seem almost miraculous because there are so many elements of the body that can benefit from hydrogen.
Yeah.
Could you give me an example of some of the areas that you're aware of where one can benefit?
Almost everywhere. Well, from brain to heart, lung, liver, kidney, almost every organ of our body. And as Professor Oda says, it works everywhere and it has so much beneficial effect. So some people says, oh, it's very skeptical. It can't be. It must be some force. And then one thing, unfortunately, there was a negative campaign against molecular hydrogen a couple of years ago. So the market went down, but still many people realizes the beneficial effect, so they keep drinking hydrogen. And the one thing is, I guess, it's my guess, but since molecular hydrogen works much better than conventional medicine, and can you imagine doctors and pharmaceutical companies, they don't like that. So that's how there is a strong against opinion from pharmaceutical companies or medical doctors. They just don't like it.
At this conference and other places, I have heard so many stories of so many different areas of health that benefit from hydrogen. Yeah. And even in your own address, you covered a lot of them. For our audience who won't be familiar with all the ways in which hydrogen can help, can you run through some of the things that you found most notable?
And actually, it changed my life as well, of my family.
You see, because when you know that it's some kind of foods are not good, like trans fats, you see, you are trying to avoid it. And you're trying to eat better, more healthy food and so on. And I feel myself quite good. I am 70 plus now. And I feel myself quite good. So I do exercise every morning. I was in a former time in Leningrad, I was champion in rowing, academic rowing on a single scull. So that's why it's close to my heart, you see. I like physical exercises, physical load. And of course it helps. And I got this machine generating hydrogen water at my apartment, so our family is using this. And now we got equipment, scientific equipment, to measure concentrations in blood, in water, in the air, in expired air, and started to promote this in Russia. So now it's become more and more popular. So, and from time to time I'm giving interview on our central TV channels, newspapers, main newspapers. So it's more and more become well known for the general public.
So there you go. Excuse me, I put a jumper on. It's getting quite chilly here. It's almost 11:30 in the evening in Ireland. So those are some interviews with Darrell Jaffrey, first of all, and then from the Molecular Hydrogen Conference. If you want to look at the studies, as we discussed earlier, you can go to hydrogenstudies.com, a site kindly provided by a third party, and you can go to hydrogenstudies.com and put in whatever ailment you have there. Do a search, and you will find all the studies that have been done on those different elements. Thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. It is late in the evening, and wherever you are, take care of yourself, take care of your family. God bless you. Appreciate you being here. I know you're here because you care about your health, and there's nothing better you can do than try to improve your health for yourself, your family, and your future. So thank you again. God bless you, each one. Take care. Good night.